Hey kids, team with Crypto the Wonder Dog. It's been a while, and hey, we're getting close to the holiday season, and it's Christmas time, and you're buying stuff, and you get wrapped up in what you're doing. So gonna be moving the studio here and going to a new location, top secret Batcave location. A little bit more light, more places to have guests come over and talk. A little more accessible, more room, and we're always crammed up against this damn banner here. I don't know if you're listening on iTunes, you're not seeing this, but you're not missing anything. Getting the hell out of here. I got a new place, so. I noticed that the drop in listenership is going way down, and I don't know if it's because of a new algorithm on iTunes or what, but doggone it, my show isn't as popular as it used to be. I don't know why. Thought it was pretty cool. Anyway, Cowboys. How about Cowboys, huh? The Cowboys came out, kicked ass against New Orleans. And then they go against another team that who the hell did they play the other night? It was just a nightmare. So what else has been going on in the world? Are ICOs are they dead? Are they going away? What haven't seen a whole lot of stuff going on. I know that Charlie and I will be doing a show here pretty soon on some more news and news and weather, the hot and cold of what cryptos is doing right now. But we had a little jump in the market, $4,061 for Bitcoin. I went and put a little coin inside of Litecoin, and I've seen just a dusting of return on my Litecoin here. It's not definitely not going out and buying a Lambo tomorrow. But Bo Ploney, if you're watching the shows that he did, he was very, very right on with some of the stuff that he was talking about. The world market's kind of going down, and crypto seems to be creeping back up, which I kind of hope so. Leave your comments below on what you think's going to happen. And then like and subscribe. I always forget to say that. Maybe that's why I'm not getting any likes or subscribes to my damn YouTube channel. But please like and subscribe. It's the way that helps us out. And support other channels that are talking about crypto. This is we're all brothers here, right? We're all supposed to be shaking hands on this. I know that the Crypto Somniac, another one of my good shows that I like to listen to, and the Bad Crypto Podcast. Give those guys a listen if you haven't already. Pretty great show. So I went to San Francisco and met with my friend Chris Carl from DigiMax, which we used to be called ICO Max, and they do airdrops inside of conferences. And I know that we've been talking about the North American Sports and Blockchain Conference, which is another sore spot on my body of pain. We're going to be doing that a little later than we thought. We thought we were going to be doing that in February, but I guess the world markets of people doing conferences is starting to cool off. So we're going to potentially push that off until May, which is my daughter's birthday, in May. But we're going to go 9, 10, 11 May. What do you think? Let me know what you think about that. We're going to be Santa Monica, Lowe's Hotel, where they have the American film market. I don't know if you guys are into film, but we're also going to be doing the North American film, or North American entertainment and blockchain. So we're doing North American sports and blockchain, Lowe's Hotel, and then later on the show, hopefully, Lord don't come and the creek don't rise, be doing the North American Sports and Blockchain Conference in May. Chris Carl from DigiMax just got sidetracked there. I don't know what the hell's going on. DigiMax, they are the regulatory compliant platform for high quality STOs and qualified investors. Now, you know, they used to be called ICO and ICO Max, taking a bad name. So they pivoted to DigiMax. And if you haven't been to any conferences where they are, no, they're actually on a cruise ship. So Stan and Greg from DigiMax, they're all over LinkedIn. And they are, I had come across Greg initially. Stan Milk, MILC, and Greg Lyman. They are the founders, along with Chris and Sergey. I haven't talked to Sergey yet, but I've talked to Stan a few times. Greg, just chatted with him this morning. He's in Toronto, and Chris Carl. So this is the interview I did with Chris Carl about DigiMax. Check it out, digimax.global. If you haven't already, it's in the show notes. Check it out. Give it a whirl. If you've got an ICO coming out, if you got an STO coming out, these are the guys that you're going to want to go to and get your project listed on their drops. So having more shows coming out this week. Hopefully, got some people on the horizon. But once we get the new Bat Cave, the new Crypto Cave, the new Doghouse. Hey, that's it. The Doghouse. We have the new Doghouse coming up for the show. Crypto the Wonder Doghouse. If you want to be a sponsor of the show, please send me a note. If you want to be on the show, send me a note. If you like watching the show, send me a note. Like and subscribe. Hit that bell so you know when we got a new show coming up. Anyway, here's the show with my buddy Chris Carl from DigiMax. You guys ready to start the show? All right, let's start the show. Looks like we got good levels on everything.
Yeah.
So
set to go.
yeah. So how the hell are you?
Good morning.
Good. You good?
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Happy to be here in San Francisco at the
Yeah.
big blockchain conference. And certainly been meeting lots of interesting people and finding lots of people very interested in what it is that we're doing with DigiMax.
What is this? What's this conference called? What's this?
It's called the Global Blockchain Forum.
Global Blockchain Forum.
Yep.
Okay.
Happening here in San Francisco, and one of many conferences, of course, around the world for this industry. And we try to get to some of the more important ones, and this was a very good one.
You came in from Canada.
Yeah, I live in Toronto, but we're a very global company. Our headquarters is in Toronto, but everything we do is internationally based.
Yeah. Have you always lived in Canada?
I have. I was born there, and I've always lived there, but I've done most of my business in the United States, actually, over my 30-year career. And I've been involved in bringing companies from sort of startup stage into quite large companies. I've taken a couple of companies public and raised a significant amount of capital over the years, and I know how to do that from the securities industry standpoint.
Yeah.
And in doing that, both out of New York and out of Toronto, and raising money literally all over the world, I'm able to take that knowledge and bring it to this whole sort of token space now on a security token basis, which is really what we've always been interested in, something that's 100% regulatory compliant. And that really means, for the most part, security tokens, not ICOs or utility tokens, although there still are some types of utility token that are, in fact, regulatory compliant if they're used in day-to-day transactions within the business.
Yeah. Is there a lot of I know that the SEC here in the U.S. is very very similar to the
Yeah, we have a securities
Canada.
commission in Canada, and virtually every country does, and as they should. I think there's some confusion in this industry, and when I say this industry, the whole sort of crypto industry. Of course, we have the coins, the big currency coins like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and also the individual coins that individual companies will issue for various reasons. But all of that process kind of grew out of crowdfunding. And when crowdfunding was first sort of conceived, at least using the internet and the web for that, it was originally conceived as a charity event, such as people would put in small amounts, but lots of people would do it, and you could raise $1 million for a small community in Africa to put in better water and irrigation systems and what have you. But when crowdfunding grew to a point where private corporations were using it to raise quite literally hundreds of millions of dollars, that raised the eyebrows of the securities commissions all over the world, not just the SEC in the U.S., but everywhere. And for some reason, and I can't quite figure it out, given that I come from an industry where I have worked with the securities commissions quite legally to raise capital, for some reason it became kind of a confrontational thing, and it wasn't really necessary for that to happen. There are very easy to follow rules from the securities commissions all over the world. They differ, and in some countries certainly they have adopted special rules toward the issuing of tokens. But at the end of the day, you're issuing a security. The rules are pretty straightforward. There are exemptions for smaller companies, and as long as you work with a securities lawyer, you can abide by those rules very easily.
Yeah.
It doesn't slow your process down, and it doesn't really add a lot of cost to the issuing of a token. But what it does do is it gives the buyer of that token a lot more assurance that they're buying something that's a safer investment than if you didn't follow the rules. And so we're big believers, and have been since the creation of our company. We're big believers that let's do it right. Let's fly above all the laws and regulations, and let's create a global entity that can help private companies raise capital, do it right, and get on with building their businesses.
Yeah, you were talking when we were talking last night. You were talking about that there's a lot of companies or a lot of people that they try to take the rules and bend them and forge them for their own purpose instead of just kind of following the rules. And that's kind of what you guys are.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not do that.
I don't want to, be accusatory toward anyone. I think it's more of an attitude that somehow, their lives are being unnecessarily constrained, and I would disagree with that. I think that some of the basic concepts that securities commissions are looking to do is ensure that there's fair opportunity for all sizes of investors. And this isn't just protecting the little guy, although, in North America we have something called accredited investors, and generally, early stage financings in the form of private placement or pre-sale of tokens is limited to people with, pick a number, but with net worth higher than $1 million or certain net income requirements. But even once a company has issued all their coins, they've done a prospectus, everything is going well, the laws are still there to create a level playing field. And you take a large fund. If a large fund puts $10 million into a company, but then 20 investors are allowed to learn really important information before everybody else does, the private fund loses. So even though they're a big investor, the laws are there to protect big investors and then the smaller investor. And so that's why there are laws about disseminating information, and you have to do it in certain ways, and you have to do it in a manner that everybody at least has equal access to that information at the same time. Whether they get that access or whether they choose to get that access is up to them as the investor. But at least it's all there at the same time. That's the sort of thing that these securities commissions are trying to make sure happens.
Yeah, and they're not bad guys, right? They're not there to hurt anybody. They're not there to smack you down, right?
No, not in any way. They're really just there and say, listen, until we make better rules, these are them. Yeah. Please follow them, and if you do, we're not going to give you a hard time in any way. In fact, we'll promote you.
Do they have like a little suggestion box where people, new things are happening? Do we have a little suggestion box that people can?
I think it's way beyond that. I know in Canada, both in Canada and in the U.S., there are commissions set up to specifically study the whole crypto space, and are there special rules that would allow for what is intended behind these things? Because even within the securities rules, I think there's a huge benefit for a company to issue an STO or to do a security token offering as opposed to a common share offering. So I actually believe that there are a number of benefits for a company to do an STO, a security token offering, instead of a common share offering. because of the blockchain. The one thing that a token offering allows when it's sort of registered on the blockchain is that it can be traded 24 hours a day. The information is more secure. The owner of that token, even once it's traded, that knowledge is more secure. So there are a number of benefits, but the biggest is that the speed of transactions is and can be much faster than common shares. And so in today's world of people enjoying doing everything from their phones and digitization, tokens are a logical sort of benefit from all of that. But again, as long as you follow the securities laws, which are simple to do.
So your background, you've had tech background, you've had financial background, and so it makes you the perfect fit for this type of world right now.
We missed over the background though. You were asking about the background.
Oh, okay. So your background was you've been in tech, you've been in finance, you've been
Exactly.
You've raised companies from nothing to multi.
Yeah, I have a business degree in Canada, but I've always been involved in sort of technology, manufacturing, new technologies, patented technologies, and what have you. And I've always kind of enjoyed the startup arena. I did spend almost 10 years with one of the largest of the Fortune 500 companies, actually based out of Houston, and got to see how big companies operate, how big global companies operate, and I was a part of that team. But I always wanted to be involved in more startup end of things, and so by taking the big company knowledge, I was able to use that in some of the startups I was involved in myself. And over the years raised a sum of close to $500 million out of listings that we created in both New York and in Toronto. And as I mentioned, a lot of that money was raised around the world. So I have a very sort of global background when it comes to that, respecting, again, the securities laws that exist in all the different countries and having abided by them. And so the combination of a technical background, a business background, and a capital markets background, I think, are perfect for what we're trying to do with DigiMax. Yes.
Yeah. And there's probably not a lot of people that know the laws, because the laws vary, right, from country to country for the SEC.
And so how we've sort of abided by that is, at the end of the day, for the types of services that we want to offer, which is really helping companies fund their STOs. We can help them at the very beginning create a business plan. We can help them create their white paper. But a lot of times we're getting involved with companies that have already done those things. They may have even pre-sold some of their tokens or sold some of their tokens in a final offering. But where I think our big value is that we can create distribution. We can sell those tokens legally to investors around the world. And to do that, again, in a regulatory compliant manner, you must work only with organizations and individuals who are registered in the country that they operate. And to be registered means that usually you have a license with the Security Commission. Anybody, for instance, who's a broker or an investment advisor with one of the big firms, like a JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs, you know that those people wouldn't be working at those companies if they weren't a registered salesperson.
Yeah.
You go to some of smaller countries or whatever, they may or may not work with a large firm, but if they can show you that they are licensed, that's the people that we want to work with. The same is true if you decide that you want to issue a token out of Switzerland. You're going to have to go through a broker-dealer, a registered broker-dealer, who will manage all the KYC, know your client information. That's very important in this industry.
Yeah.
And as much as I was suggesting that the people in this industry, by and large, haven't adopted securities laws super well, they have adopted the KYC requirements very well, and that is something that is very well followed in this industry. So you start there. You have to work with a broker-dealer or a registered agent who legally, from a regulatory perspective, can collect and manage that information and do whatever due diligence is required, both on the investors and on the issuing company. But to sell it, this is where we are a bit unique. What we've created is, as of this day, we have about 120 registered salespeople in about 50 different countries around the world. And so if we're working with a company who's issuing, just pick a number, $50 million of tokens that they're looking to sell, well, we can show that transaction and the information in the white paper to all 120 registered salespeople that we have. and we can get an indication back from that group how many of them think that they have clients who would be interested in that token. And so let's say that, just pick an easy number, 50 of them came back and said, yeah, we're kind of interested. Well, every one of those registered people has their own book, meaning they have their own group of clients that they work with and that they would show deals to. So it's not like they're picking up the phone and making cold calls, but those investors or that book may consist of retail investors. It also may consist of small funds, commercial investors, or family offices. But they will show that deal to those people and then see if they have an appetite. And so what we look to and how we can really expedite this process is we'll show a given transaction to our entire group. We'll find out from them which ones want to come back and say they want to participate. And if 50 people came back and said, listen, I can take down $1 million of that because I've got some people in my book who would like to own that token, we can get that transaction done in 2 or 3 weeks, all with the securities lawyers and everyone else. And so it's not like we've tried to go and place $50 million all in one place, but we've distributed it around the world. And the benefit now to the company that's issuing these is that they now have shareholders or token holders also all around the world. They may have token holders in 20 different countries, and that's great from a global awareness perspective. It's great from, as these tokens start to trade on an exchange, you're getting lots of international trading going on. People tell their friends, and just the sort of the whole, back to crowdfunding, the whole crowd effect becomes a global crowd effect, not just a regional crowd effect, And that's a unique proposition that we bring to people that are offering tokens.
Yeah, and I think that whenever like GoFundMe and things like that started popping up a couple of years ago, and you see these success stories of these people that raised all of their thing, the whole their nut in just a couple of days. But what they don't realize is that those people probably had a gigantic network to hit. It wasn't just because they put that on GoFundMe that it happened. So if you don't have the network, so that's what you guys are kind of bringing is this gigantic network, right?
Yes, we certainly are. And I would say that this industry is normalizing. It's maturing. And therefore people are, some people are skeptical because there's, as much as there was a wave of anticipation and a wave of excitement and people were buying whatever was available because they thought it would double or go up 10 times or 50 or 100 times.
Yeah, you see the little rocket ship next to it.
Yeah, and so people were buying whatever was available. They didn't look at it. They didn't do their own due diligence. The people representing it certainly didn't do any due diligence. And unfortunately, there was a lot of horror stories.
Yes, it was.
And the way the industry has matured now is there are fewer transactions getting done, and they're not getting done as quickly, but good transactions are getting done. Companies that are issuing these things, to raise capital for their business, and that's really the majority of what we're involved in, which would be a security token. I would say about 70% of all security tokens issued today are issued really as a substitute for common share, where the purpose is to bring capital into the business to help develop and grow the company.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, those companies are still getting funded with security tokens. It's a little longer process. There's more due diligence done, and it's being completed using the help of agents who are properly registered. So we're not unique that way. The whole industry is moving that way.
Yeah.
Where we're unique is we've brought together a global team through a joint venture of different agents in about 12 different countries. We've got a global team of KYC agents that we work with. And we have this global team of registered sellers that's growing. I mean, it's growing by 10 people a week some weeks or a month certainly. And we expect it to continue to grow because what we're doing is A, 100% legal, and B, it's good quality. We're only interested in good quality. We want our clients to be good quality, and we want to give them absolutely great quality service in return.
Oh, awesome. You had a talk yesterday here at the Global Blockchain.
Yeah, Global Blockchain
Forum. What's the difference between a forum and a conference? Is there any difference in there? No.
Yeah, the Global Blockchain Forum. We were at the. We are still now. We've been attending the last 2 days the Global Blockchain
When did you
Forum
get here?
in San Francisco. I got in. What is it now? We're Friday morning. I got here Wednesday night.
You got Wednesday night. Was there anything going on Wednesday?
This is a long conference. There's
is it?
There's different
because it's not
segments to
just
it.
this. I mean, there's other things going on. It's a 2-week thing, right?
2 week or 10 day. I'm not familiar with all the agenda, but
Wow.
there is lots going on in AI and in different fintech type of areas. But these last 2 days have been all about blockchain related activities. You know.
And you had a good talk yesterday, right?
Yeah, I was part of a panel, and what that was about was using the blockchain to accelerate the growth of companies. And one of the things that you need to accelerate your growth is to have good access to capital. And so, the way that we operate with tokens, of course, is those are all registered on the blockchain.
Yeah.
And that makes for much more efficient sort of processing of investments. You've got that permanent record. Every time a token is traded, you have a great record. And it allows for 24-hour trading, which is what most common shares you can't do. They trade on an exchange, and that exchange is open from 9:30 till 4:30, Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
And if you don't get your trades in then, you kind of got to wait until the next day, And most exchanges that trade tokens operate 24/7, so you get a lot more liquidity.
Yeah.
So where we're headed is we are building what we believe is one of the first sort of global investment banks where we can provide a full suite of services to any company interested in raising capital through the issuance of security tokens. Okay? And when I say full suite, we can talk to a company that's got a great idea, great technology, maybe some IP, some protected intellectual property, but they really don't have their business plan in place yet. And we can set about to work with our global advisors to help put that all together. And that will culminate in a variety of required documents, including a white paper, and using advisors in the area where they want to be domiciled will make sure it's also prepared in a way that's compliant with the regulations of that jurisdiction. For instance, there may be somebody based right here in San Francisco, but for various reasons they want to raise their token domiciled in Singapore. Well, we have a great joint venture relationship with a group out of Singapore, and we would get them involved at the very beginning and make sure that we build out the business plan in a way that we know is going to be efficient and consistent with the laws in Singapore.
Yeah.
And so we can provide those front-end services. We don't have to, but we have the ability to do that. Then we get into working with the securities lawyers and usually auditors as well, who are familiar with this industry, and we get all the legal documentation done correctly and then filed with the regulator. Okay? Again, it's not a hard process. It's not a long process. It's not free, but it's not a deal-killing expense either. And oftentimes we can raise capital for that into the pre-sale of tokens, or even, frankly, a private placement of common shares into a company. So there's lots of alternatives. The big part is when you go to raise your larger amount of capital, it's easy to put the structure together and work with a KYC agent to do that, but it's difficult to go and sell the whole amount. Okay? And what happens is through friends and family and an early round, raising that first $1 to $5 million, I don't want to overstate and say it's easy, but it's easier than when you want to go and raise the next 20 million or 30 million, let alone 100 or 200 million. And there's always going to be some companies, and it's like winning the lottery. There's always going to be some company that just did $500 million or $1 billion that are very, very well connected, and they're doing something at a super large scale. Yeah. But the great majority of issuances of STOs or security tokens are happening at that sort of $10 to $50 million range. And they're not easy to do, but the hardest part is to get them sold into the investors' hands. And investors would be, as I mentioned earlier, it would be sort of commercial investors, or what we call institutional investors, fund managers and what have you. It would be family offices, and generally high net worth individuals. Those three groups take up about 75 to 80% of all token investors. And then you have what we call retail investors, people who don't necessarily have high net worth above $1 million, but who over time have become kind of sophisticated in this market. Yeah. And they still play in it, but they play it at smaller sizes of the transactions that they invest in. But because we have this network of 120 registered salespeople and growing, we can access the global suite of investors, the global sort of population of investors, much better than if you're working with one agent in one region. Yeah, and that's really our big benefit.
Is there still a lot of money out there to get invested in? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the industry is hurting a little bit because a lot of money, as we all know, reading the newspapers, like great fortunes were made by people investing thousands of dollars and turning that into millions, multiple millions of dollars in the rise of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Yeah. But I would say the great majority of people that made that money also held it in those currencies. And, even Bitcoin at $6,500 is about a third of what it was at its peak. Right?
Yeah.
So that means they've lost 2/3 of that value. And so when Bitcoin was approaching $20,000 per coin, there was a ton of money floating around,
Yeah.
in fiat terms or fiat equivalent terms. And there's not as much of that floating around. And people, as a result, are feeling a little more bruised and a little more cautious. But that's just a sign of an industry maturing. That's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Yeah, because a lot of people they had that wake up call right when it was at like $15 million or $15,000 and jumped in then.
Well, and that's the nature of humanity. Securities laws aren't there to protect even against that. That's unfortunately, there's nothing really you can do about it. That's true
it's
about
a
the
chance.
stock market.
You
It's
got
true
in
about
at 5,000 and you
exactly. And it's just people are cautious. They don't understand, and then they get into it gets so good they fear of missing out.
Yeah.
But by the time they finally make their decision to get in, the money's all sort of been made, and it's an unfortunate reality.
Yeah. I'm guilty of that too.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's the way of the world, and it always will be.
Yeah.
And it just is what it is. And
Yeah.
it goes to show you, though, that if you're going to invest money, there's two ways. There's investing and there's speculating. Speculating is what you do when you go to Las Vegas and bet on blackjack. You're gambling. Okay, you hope for a good return. You're using a little bit of knowledge that you have to play well, but at the end of the day, it's pretty random. Okay, investing is really taking your time to understand something, and there are opportunities today to invest well in companies that are issuing tokens because they're good quality companies. They've got revenue, they've got good partners, they've got good management, and you are making an investment then. You're not doing it on the hopes of getting 10,000% return in the first 6 months. You're hoping that this thing will grow over time, and by giving them your capital, you're basically making them the steward of your money, and you're expecting them to go out and work hard and bring you a return.
Yeah.
Really very similar to investing in a company in common shares, except that you get a faster process and more 24/7 trading, and so you get better liquidity, arguably, with tokens over time.
Yeah, and that kind of brings up something that we were talking about last night. It was a lot of these cats that were they had a great idea and they went and they did their ICO. They raised $25, $50, $75 million, and they're sitting there holding a gigantic bag of cash, and then they go, what's next?
Yeah. Well, they do, and now depending on when they raised it, what they're not holding is usually a bag of cash. They're holding a bag of cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
So they've lost a bunch of it as these values have come back down to earth. On the one hand, but you're right. They had an idea, but not a business plan.
Yes.
And you've got a bunch of people who, were very successful early days. And don't let me say that they're not really smart, because they got out there and they did something.
Yeah, you must be doing something right. You could raise $50 million.
Exactly. But yeah, you meet them and they're really a little unsure as to how to execute now. And again, that's just signs of an industry maturing. They're going to get that figured out. They're looking for value-added business propositions to bring to this industry.
Yeah,
there's a lot of discussion about that yesterday in the various panels, and just like where the web and all the web applications that were coming on in the late '90s, leading up to 2000, where there was everybody who put .com in their name was able to see their stock rise by 100%.
Oh yeah.
Now for a while, everybody that put the blockchain in their company name saw their stock double, right? You go through that phase. Well, there was a whole lot of companies that were .coms that went bankrupt. But there's also a whole lot of companies that did very well, you know. And you look at Amazon, you look at Apple, you look at Microsoft,
Oh my God.
There were very real businesses being developed during that same period where there were a bunch of crazy ideas that got funded that should never have been funded. And the same is true, and has been true over the last couple of years. You talk to a really smart institutional investor who has put their money into a variety of these companies issuing tokens, and they'll tell you that, listen, we can't absolutely tell you which ones of these companies are going to be the next Amazon or the next Apple, but we know that that's what's emerging, and we know that this is an industry that's here to stay. But it's still learning. We're all learning. We got a bunch of smart people. We got a bunch of smart technical people behind the whole blockchain science. We got a bunch of smart business people in this industry figuring out how to make it all work. Yeah. And over time, it's going to be amazing. But right now, we're just going through that little tough phase. And whether that's a long tough phase or a short tough phase, no one knows for sure. Which is why, as an investor, as well as one who helps underwrite these things, you look beyond the token. What's behind it? Who's behind it? Who's the management team?
Yes.
What's the company? What is their business? And is it real? Are there real customers? Is it scalable? Have they shown evidence of scaling it? And if they've done all of those things, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to do well with that company if they can execute, because the opportunity is very real.
Yeah, I mean, when I got in, October, November, anything that had ICO, people were jumping on it, right? If you just saw the word ICO, you wanted a piece of it.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Well, and unfortunately, the concept of ICO, initial coin offering, was largely put together to parallel IPO, initial public offering, which of course represents common shares in the securities industry, and now ICO has a very bad name.
And it
as
does.
You're probably aware, and people who know us, we have an app that we've been working on called ICO Max, but even at this conference yesterday, I handed them a business card that said ICO Max on it, and they're like, we can't do anything with somebody who does ICOs, so that's fine. The industry has evolved, and the terminology has been determined to be, sort of, you can't go there. And so our company is right in the process of renaming itself as DigiMax, and that will all be completed over the next few days. We have both a public company, or one that's about to publicly trade, and it will be based in Toronto.
And we what?
It will be trading in Toronto. It's a publicly listed company.
All right.
It was called DigiCrypts.
DigiCrypts.
Just for digital and crypto, and we are changing the name of that company to DigiMax.
DigiMax.
And then the app will also be called DigiMax. So we have one brand name now, and everything is being rebranded as we speak. And the beauty there is, while it is intended to be all related to the issuance of security tokens, we're not limited to just the crypto space. We're creating this global investment bank, and we can do common shares if we want to. We can, we just have a great network of registered partners who legally can do all of these activities.
Yeah.
And so, as a company, as DigiMax, what we're really out there to do is to be a full-service underwriter and banker of investors and investment funds into good quality companies. Right?
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that we are doing, and I mentioned this ICO Max app, and a lot of people that go to these conferences are familiar with them, is that app over the next year is going to evolve into really an incredible tool for companies and investors alike. And it's getting evolved and rolled out in 5 phases. The first phase is already sort of there, although it's still early days, and that's something called Flyerdrop. And it has a couple of components to it. The first one is that we literally print a physical flyer.
Did you bring those with you?
I'm sorry? You know what? I don't have one in my hand.
You didn't bring one? I wanted to see one.
I'll get one for you.
All right, cool.
And we'll go to a conference and we'll take 1,000 of those and leave them out for people to look at. And, when they're sitting having a coffee on a break or whatever, they'll see they're quite colorful and they realize that there's a bunch of companies on it, usually anywhere from 6 to 10 companies that are listed. You can, take your phone and there's a QR code for each company. You hold your phone up to that and boom, you immediately have all that company's information. And, as sort of another inducement to follow their token, it'll actually, you can transfer just a small number of tokens, hence the coupon.
Make a little coin on that.
And it ends up first in a wallet that's part of the app, and longer term you can convert from that wallet to your own personal wallet. You have your own personal wallet within our app just by registering.
Oh, you get your own wallet with your app.
But you're not holding large value there. Each one of these coins that transfers over might be just a few dollars worth, but suddenly you're following it. You've created a portfolio, Okay. The other thing we do is we post all of that through our followers on social media, which includes LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram.
You guys pretty active on all that?
We do. We have a quite a large following on the LinkedIn due to Stan and Greg's efforts over the last couple of years, and a growing following on both Twitter and on Instagram. And so what we're up to as a company is posted, and then we have a global advisory group of 15 pretty big name individuals within this industry, well-recognized individuals, who are part of our advisory team. And what they do is a couple of things. They participate in quarterly meetings that we have as a company talk about trends in the industry and what's going on, what's working well, what isn't, so that we can stay abreast of that and we can keep them as individuals abreast of what we learn. But the other thing that they do is they'll take those social media posts that we post, and they'll share them into their networks, and they have huge followings as well. So anybody who wants to advertise their company that they're now getting out there and creating a token, this is a great, very inexpensive vehicle to really get your name broadcast around the world. Because ultimately, our advisor group and ourselves, we count about 4 million followers. Now, a lot of that 4 million are going to be the same person, linked up to a bunch of the same people, but somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million distinct individuals will be getting these sort of blasts through the various forms of social media that they follow.
Wow.
And after a number of times hitting your eyeballs, you start to consciously pay attention. The first few times it just kind of goes right by you, but after seeing something 6 or 8 times, and this is a big thing with Procter & Gamble in their marketing in early days, they realized that an individual needs to see something 7 times before it goes from their subconscious into their conscience, and that's what advertising is all about, and that's what this does. Okay, so it's a fairly simple process. It's very inexpensive. For less than the price it would cost you to attend one conference, we can help you get exposure all around the world over the course of 30 days. The next one is really what we're doing now, but we're doing it without the app, and we're doing it on a consulting basis because our company itself is not yet registered, but we will be in a few months. But we are pulling together all the registered players and helping out companies on a consulting basis. And so this second phase right now of the app, once we have it automated, will be called SailDrop. And this group of 120 salespeople that we right now reach out to through email and various other means when we have a deal to show them, they'll all be registered on our app. All of their KYC information will be registered so that we know that they're legally registered, and any KYC agent that we work with will be able to go into that database and confirm that that's all in good shape. And it allows us that we can then contact those 120, which by the time we have this running, it could be 200 registered agents around the world. They'll all get the message at exactly the same time. Here's a good deal. And if we're bringing it forward, we will have worked with our KYC agents to do the due diligence to make sure it's a good deal. And they can then immediately respond, almost bid on how much of that deal they would like to sell themselves and what time, over what period of time they think they can sell it, 1, 2, 3 weeks. So it really will shorten the process of distributing the deal around the world to registered sellers and getting them in turn to close. The third phase of 5 phases, I know this is a bit of a long description, but the third phase is where investors, institutional investors and retail investors, can sign up and become members on the app. It's going to be a very low cost. It may start out as $0, but at most it would ever be $5 a month. Again, you register all your KYC information with us. And then what's going to happen is every time we have a new deal, not only can we show it to our registered salespeople, but we can show it to our population of members. And what we're envisioning there is that the members, they won't get any better terms than the rest of the public will, because everybody has to be allowed to buy something at whatever price it's being purchased at. But our group, by being a member, you'll get a 1-week advance opportunity to buy a pre-sale or an ICO token over the rest of the population. And you can make your own determination in those 7 days whether you like the deal or not like the deal. But it gives you that small advantage. From the issuer's perspective, the company raising the money, they'll like it because if by that time we have 5 or 5,000 members or whatever number we might have, that's an immediate group that we can show it to. And they can get some great feedback, because if nobody wants to buy that deal, well, there's some good feedback there too. It means they need to go back to the well a little bit and figure out. It might be just a pricing problem. It might be that the industry they're working in isn't that fashionable. It might be any kind of little flaw that can be fixed. And usually they can be fixed. But getting that kind of feedback quickly is a great thing, even when it's a negative feedback.
And it's instant. You could just it's right there in the app, right?
And you could. So the beauty there is again, it just shortens the process. All right? You still have to work with securities lawyers. We still have to usually get audits done. We still have to work with ultimately a lead, registered broker dealer. All of those things will always exist because that's how you stay regulatory compliant. But once we've passed through those couple of hurdles, the rest of the selling process is expedited with this app. And then the phases 4 and 5. 4 is really just the fact that we offer a whole suite of services, a whole suite of underwriting services. If you want to compare it to the securities industry, everything from upfront advisory right through to the final sale.
Yep.
And the 5th phase of this app is something where, again, I think the industry has been slow to understand and adopt what is necessary. These tokens don't go away. They don't like have a 2-year life and then they just somehow get disposed of.
Yeah.
Somebody ends up owning them. They do get traded, but somebody ends up owning them with an expectation that they're going to hold their value and continue to grow. And there really hasn't been a great job done so far, I don't believe, of the post-ICO work, okay, where they're reporting quarterly like you would need to be, because if you issue a security, that's required.
Yeah.
And also where... We're getting some background music here. Okay. So, quarterly, where they have to post their information quarterly, as is required by most security exchanges. Sometimes it's twice a year. And then to, frankly, just do as if you were running a public company. You know, it's important to work with investor relations so that your investors are aware of what you're doing as a company, both what you've already accomplished and what your plans are, that you're attracting new investors and, frankly, new customers all at the same time. It's a public relations / investor relations type of program. Issuing press releases when something big happens with the company. And you'll be able to do all of those things through the 5th phase of our app. You know, you may also issue press releases, worldwide with other newswire services, but anything that you do along those ways can be pushed out to all of our members, and hopefully we have a growing membership as well. And so all of those things benefit both the issuer, the company that's raised and issued the tokens to raise capital, but it also benefits the investors who've invested in them.
Yeah.
And it just becomes a phenomenal little app that we think is very unique, and it will be immediately global. It'll operate in multiple languages, and it really will be existent and able to be downloaded through Apple and through Google on every corner of the earth eventually.
Yeah. And people really like you want to know what's going on with when you buy something. Especially if it's like that, you want to know what's going on.
You want to have updates. You want to know, did they take my money and run, or did they, are they continuing to build their company?
And this is kind of a little bit of a security blanket that you guys kind of provide for. You're keeping everybody together. Watch what's going on.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And again, if you've ever operated public companies, you'd know that this is absolutely normal.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was.
People in this token world, they're not used to this. They're just
and I don't want to put everybody down en masse, and I'm not putting anyone down. It's just
no.
The token world evolved out of this crowdfunding, and crowdfunding never ever did all the things that public companies did and are required to do. And what's happened is crowdfunding and tokenization was so successful, beyond most people's belief, frankly, and there's always a few people who knew all the way.
As long as you had the bullhorn to get that information out there, that
exactly
was available to.
But the crowdfunding never really had a long-term nature to it. Crowdfunding was always about grab the funds, get them where you want them to go, and then walk away.
Yep.
And the token world has learned that, well, hang on, we've actually issued securities. We can't just walk away, and that's okay. It's not putting anybody down. It's like that's the maturing of this industry into a securities compliant industry, and that's great. It's a math I don't think I've thrown out, but I do in most times when I'm speaking, is you can choose your number. You can do your research on the web and what have you, but I follow a number of a belief that it's about $1.5 trillion per year raised around the globe for companies, for development purposes and what have you.
What was that number again?
1.5 trillion, okay, in capital markets. Okay. That could be public debt, predominantly public equity, and increasingly, sort of tokens. Okay, so in 2017, even though it was a hyped up year and there was all this stuff going on, I've seen numbers ranging from $7.5 to $14 billion. Okay, so pick a number. I'm going to use a number that's easy math and say it was $15 billion that was raised in 2017. That would equate to 1% of the 1.5 trillion of all capital raised. Okay, wow. In 2018, even though it's considered a slow year, we actually believe that by the time the year is out, it'll be closer to $30 billion that will have been raised through the sale of tokens. And whereas most of the tokens issued in 2017 were utility tokens and not securities compliant, I would say that more than half of the tokens issued in 2018 are securities compliant, and we'll probably be at 90% of all tokens issued in 2019 will be securities compliant.
Right.
So even though there's a sensation that the market has shrunk, it hasn't. It's continued to grow, but better quality deals that take longer have happened. Now here's where I was going with this. If this industry continues to adopt the laws, the securities laws, and just simply follow those rules and regulations, I personally believe, because of the reasons of blockchain and 724 trading ability and whatever, that they'll become very popular and very compliant, and frankly can be 10 or 20% of the global amount of capital raised. And if you do that, that's $300 billion a year, many multiples of what happened the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And so there's a huge opportunity for everybody in this industry. And the parallel to that is, again, what happened with the dot-coms. So in the late 90s, everybody that walked that had .com in their name exploded. And then there was this huge rationalization, and the great majority of those companies didn't make it. But the good ones came out of the ashes, and other ones have come along since. And now you have a very, very vibrant .com industry. And I think we're going to see very parallel here. Now, in the .com industry, it took 5 years for that to kind of turn around and the good companies to emerge and become really profitable. Amazon's been around, 20 years, and is just profitable last year for the first time. But it's been investing capital like crazy, and now is the number one, I believe it's over Apple, but between Apple and Amazon, they go back and forth in terms of the number one market cap value, and they're both over $1 trillion.
And everywhere you go, I mean, you're like now, I go to Whole Foods, right? Is it Whole Foods?
Yep. Which is owned by Amazon now.
It's Amazon now.
Yeah.
And you're driving down the street and you see Amazon trucks everywhere.
Yes, exactly. Well,
and it's
pretty pervasive. It's in some ways it's like a bad novel, but
And a lot of you said some of these companies that emerged, they started, but they failed, but a lot of them got bought up.
Oh, sure. There's all kinds of mergers, acquisitions.
Some little piece of technology this other company didn't really think about. They're like, oh yeah, that's great. Let's buy that.
Yeah,
so it helped a lot of people out.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that'll happen right now, right?
Well, this is it's sort of at a global level, like at an industry-wide level. It's a little easier to make the prediction that that's what's going to happen with companies that have been involved in the token world and the blockchain world. No guarantee that happens, but parallels are pretty similar. But it's very hard to say which companies are going to become the big ones and which ones aren't.
Of course, yeah.
But all the right tools are there, and by following securities laws, not trying to reinvent them, but obviously adopting and changing your ways as new rules are created, by just going with that flow, it's a way easier way to get this done correctly and get on with raising the money. And staying out of jail, for that matter. But because of that, and I think the industry is headed that way, and we want to be one of the leaders in helping the industry head that way. I think that what you are going to see is that of all the capital raised, we'll get to 5%, we'll get to 10%, we'll get to 20%, maybe in as little as 5 or 10 years. And think about the size of this industry. The token industry could be $300 billion a year. Whereas this year it's like a tenth of that, or somewhere between 10th and a 12th of that. So we're pretty excited about that opportunity. And as a company with DigiMax, our whole goal is to take all these joint venture relationships that we have and to ultimately consolidate with these companies. So we have very good referral relationships with them now, and they're registered, and we rely on that. And slowly, DigiMax will become registered in every country as well. And we can do some sort of acquisition with them or create a new entity so that over the next couple of years, instead of operating in 12 countries as we are now, under 12 different names, we'll have one brand name around the globe. The same people that are our joint venture partners now will be our managing partners in those countries eventually, but where we can operate as one entity. And as we achieve that, I think that we can be among, not necessarily the largest, but we'll be among the largest sort of global providers of underwriting services for STOs. I think that we can be among the first that is doing this, and we can be among the best. Our goal is to absolutely be the highest quality service provider in our space that we possibly can. And so that companies can come to us with the knowledge that we only deal with great companies, and we only deal with great people who are absolutely above board and wanting to make things happen in the right ways. There's still no guarantee of success. I mean, you can have a startup with somebody who just made $1 billion of profit on their last company. That's not a guarantee that they're going to make $1 billion this time, but you have the knowledge that, at least they know how it was done, and they've proven that they can have high integrity. And that's really what this business is about at the end of the day. If you come at it with high integrity and good intentions, you can surround yourself with other good people, and at least you increase your chances for success.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I've always said was that when I first got into this, it seemed like everyone that I talked to that was involved with this was super nice. They're very helpful. They want to bring other people in. They want to share their knowledge. They don't want to hold on to it and keep it. But they want to share it and help other people out too.
And I haven't chatted a lot, but that's sort of how our team got formed. We have 5 partners who were founders of DigiMax. 3 of them have spent the last multiple years in the crypto space, which is Stan and Greg and Sergey, who's our chief technical officer. He's got more of the technical background and has been leading a team of developers developing the app that I've described. And then 2 of us, my partner David Posner and I, were involved in a couple of different things together. I've been involved in developing companies and taking them public through the common share basis, as I mentioned earlier, for more than 30 years. David's been doing it for 15 years. And so, what it gives us is, I think that we all have high integrity. I love working with my partners because they work hard and they're honest, they're friendly, just as the things that you described, and they're reaching out to partners and customers alike all the time, bending over backward to try to help. And you got a group of people that are like that and are like-minded, that we all believe that the way ahead with this industry is to be regulatory compliant, and it makes for a great team because we're a team with 5 different sets of skills, and so we're all leading this company in different ways and building the various building blocks or the foundation of this company in different ways, but we're all headed in the same direction and have the same goals, and it's a great working team.
I think that Stan was one of the first guys that I saw when I was doing my research on LinkedIn, and his stuff just kept on popping up, and he was sharing information and showing that he's doing all this stuff, and good looking guy, and people probably gravitate towards him, so he actually has that natural ability to bring people in, and
exactly, he really is. He's the youngest member of our team in his early 30s, and he grew up in a digital world. The phone and the laptop are an extension of his arm, and he knows how to do that as well as anybody, and he does. But I'll tell you, I get emails. We'll all be in different parts of the world at different times, and I'll get an email from him and realize it's 3 a.m. where Stan is, but he's up there working away, and that's just great. And he and Greg have been spending the better part of the past 2 years traveling the world to these conferences.
They're everywhere.
They really are, and they're omnipresent, I think. And one week they're in Korea, and suddenly the next week they're over in Dubai, and then they're over in Malta, and and it's great. And they're the most personable people in the world. And to their massive credit, though, and I talked to a lot of people in the last couple of days about this. They don't have the securities industry background, but they sure respect it. And they do a great job communicating on behalf of what is now DigiMax about why what we're doing is just a little bit different, a little bit ahead of the curve on this whole thing, and definitely way above expectation. We want to not just be compliant, we want to be we want to be the company and the service provider that the securities commissions point to and say, if you guys can do it like DigiMax does it, we won't give you any problem.
Spokesmodel for the
and for that reason, we have sat down with securities commissions around the world, and the people from these commissions
you probably have
showed them what we're doing, and they're going, we love this. Now, don't get ahead of us. Don't do stuff that our rules don't allow yet. Or don't require, and it's like, no, we're not trying to get ahead of you, but we are trying to be always compliant. And to be compliant, of course, the first thing you got to do is you got to work with a securities lawyer in that country to even know what the rules are, and working with professionals is really important. Working with good auditors and good securities lawyers makes all the difference in the world. There's a bit of an upfront investment to do it, measured in the few thousands of dollars, but by doing that, you know you're going to be compliant, and you know that you're not going to make a lot of mistakes that are very expensive, measured in the hundreds of thousands of dollars down the road. So huge believer of using really good lawyers at the front end of the process.
Take a little extra time, do it right, and then come out on top.
Absolutely.
Don't end up in
Yep, exactly.
SEC jail.
And have nothing in your way once you're there. We're doing that as a public company right now. We did a private placement back in the spring to get this company started. And we'd hoped that we would be trading by now, and we're a few weeks away.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, there's going to be a huge opportunity, even in our company, that will now be called DigiMax. We'll be trading in Toronto. And, it's something that everybody should be watching out for, because when this starts to trade, we're starting out very small. But we have an opportunity to become a company worth tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars over the years in market cap. And I think there is a huge opportunity. Again, just like our customers and our clients, we can't guarantee their success. I can't sit here and guarantee the success of DigiMax, but I can guarantee you it's going to be a company worth watching, and it might be a company worth owning a little bit of the stock at the beginning, and then increasing as your confidence grows that we're actually going to achieve everything we're setting out to do. Yeah,
you're not trying to get jump on top right away. I mean, you just make sure that everything you're doing is right and slow and steady, and make sure you.
It absolutely is. I think it's a slow and steady process, and on a percentage basis, compound the size of our company annually, and because we only work with industry-proven entities that are registered, as a sort of a global syndicate, we're fairly new. But everybody we work with has, 20 plus years in the securities industry and success already in the token industry. And so what you're doing really is you're bringing together great quality people and great individual success stories and putting them all under one roof, and or at least under one corporate roof. And we think that's a massive success in the making.
With some of the companies that you're bringing in, you guys are bringing a lot of value to what they don't realize that they actually need. You're bringing exposure. You're bringing a global audience instead of just and
we're bringing an experience of having run public companies ourselves and run them very successfully.
You've got a pretty great background from
my partner does, and the people that we're working with around the globe all have very good experience at that as well. And so, those are all sort of the non-measurable factors that come along with working with DigiMax, because we're more than just people who arrange to get you a check. We can provide you some great advisory services along the way that help you get there. But part of that absolutely is creating an awareness of what you're doing. If you're running a company like this in what is the public arena, and as soon as you issue a security token, just like a common share, you now are operating in the public arena. You have an obligation to publish your financial information and what have you. But once you've done that, you also have a desire and obligation to make sure the world is aware of what you're doing. And what we're doing right now is a great example of that. I talked about our Flyerdrop, which is sort of a static process of getting information out. But this is a fantastic forum.
It's like one at a time with a little Flyerdrop. You got one at a time.
Yeah, but not only are we here telling you about what DigiMax is doing, but we can bring these clients along and have them talk to you about what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And how DigiMax is helping them. And you have obviously an audience and a following, and share these companies that have gone through this rigorous process that I've described here.
Yes.
And why that particular company can be there. We have about 10 companies right now that we're working with.
Okay.
And we're at various stages of completion. And over the next few weeks, those will start to have some success stories attached to them, and we'll be able to bring you the CEO of those companies, and they can tell you, well, guess what? We just raised our $25 million. Here's how the process worked. Yes. Here's why it worked well, and frankly, here's what caused us some grief.
And
no story is ever perfect. There's always a good side and a bad side. Hopefully the good is much more than the bad, but it's never going to be perfect.
And you want to humanize these companies too. You don't want to just have a logo and a catchphrase, but it's great to be able to see that person, look into their eyes, and hear them talk.
Yeah,
see
absolutely.
What are they all about?
Yeah, exactly.
What do you have for breakfast? What's your favorite ball team?
Yeah,
and you humanize those people, and you feel more comfortable with it.
Exactly.
And then you starting to have, that's a real person. I like him. I like your personality. Like the cut of your jib. Whatever.
Well, and the other part of it is, your listeners and watchers and followers, there's a lot of really cool stuff happening in the world in terms of new companies coming to market, offering new types of services and new types of products, and it's a chance for them to hear about what's leading edge as well. And don't get me wrong. I mean, security tokens are good for companies that have been around for 50 years too. It's a great way of raising funding, but there's a lot of really cool stuff happening with new companies coming to market that you just know that are going to do well, and the ones that we'll introduce are probably ones that have already had some sales and they already have customers, and you can see how well their product or service is received. Yes. And now it's just a matter of, can they scale that business into a massively profitable business and make those tokens worth a lot more than you paid for them?
Yeah. Is there going to be, and this is probably going off the subject, but you said like the big companies, but is there, and I don't even know if this is even happening, but like somebody like Amazon that would tokenize Amazon? Is that,
what? I think the answer is absolutely. It's probably a couple of years away.
Yeah.
Because, the media, central banks, there's a lot of sort of distrust about sort of the crypto world, and for sure, some of the benefits that were originally sort of touted from this whole crypto space was that it was impervious to governments, it was impervious to tax regimes and whatever, and that's really not how it's being used now, and most of those issues have been settled. And certainly individual companies issuing a security token, it's not about trying to evade any tax laws or any central bank rules or whatever. It's just another form of currency, and it's a publicly monitorable currency.
Yes, it is monitorable, and I just saw something that it was Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and somebody else sitting around talking about fake gold.
Yeah,
and
back in the day,
they're using it just to harvest kidneys and sell things on the black market, and which is completely not true, because they're selling things on the black market for cash.
Yep. Well, exactly. So, yeah.
You're not gonna get rid of the black market, just because you get rid of and you're not gonna get rid of Bitcoin. You're not gonna get rid of some of these things.
In any industry, there's always going to be some who don't want to fly right, who want to try to take advantage of the system, and for a short period of time they might get away with it, but very few get away with it in the long term. On the other hand, the great majority use the tools and the opportunities in front of them properly, and can make massive profits for themselves, for their clients, and for their investors, and that's really what we're all about here. But no, I think it's a phenomenal thing. I think that going back to your point and your question, do the big companies start to do it? Sure, absolutely. Amazon probably will issue either a security token or a legal utility token. It could be something where you pay them $100 a month and get some tokens, and you can use those tokens for $140 worth of goods. Just as a simple example. I see companies, like Apple, anybody, the big companies, just partly because they always are raising capital. Those companies raise capital almost every year for one reason or another. And the new market is, hey, young people like tokens. They like the mobility. They like the swiftness of it all. And so I think you will see, just in that idea that it'll be 20% of the market, well, I think you're going to see big, well-established companies start to issue tokens over the next couple of years, just because it's another segment of the market.
Yeah. And are banks going to be going towards this? They're not going to collapse.
First of all, I don't think that tokens or cryptocurrencies are a threat to banks. I don't think the scale will ever be there. I've increasingly believed that Bitcoin, or one of the uses of Bitcoin, is a store of wealth, no different than people who believe in buying gold. And there's two ways to buy gold. You can buy gold and own an ETF or gold itself, and keep it in your broker account, or you can own the physical. You can arguably do the same with Bitcoin. Now there's a variety of ETFs coming along, or you can keep it in your own secure wallet offline and what have you. There are other uses, to be sure, of Bitcoin, as there are other uses for gold too. But that's fine. I think that what has to happen over the next couple of years is the trust has to come back from the general marketplace that this is real and it's not a sham. And having lived it in the last year and a half, I believe it's absolutely real. I believe there's very real value. There's incremental value of security tokens over common shares. And for that reason, as long as this continues to evolve in a regulatory compliant manner, I think you're going to see the percentage of these tokens as a percentage of the total world capital markets continue to grow.
Yeah,
and it's a huge opportunity for everyone involved.
Yeah. Do you see people like John McAfee who have a gigantic bullhorn? Do you see them as an asset or?
I do. So John McAfee, he's obviously been involved in public companies as well, so he's got an innate understanding of how that works. And I think as long as his message is sort of consistent with the one I've been saying, which is, listen, we don't have to be better or different or anarchy oriented. What we have to do is say, this is a great product. Yeah. It's a great financial instrument. It's something new. It's very useful. It's very sort of determinable because of the blockchain. And if that's the message that he's using his bullhorn for, I think that will be very positive for this industry.
I do too. And that's another thing that we didn't bring up a whole lot when this was the blockchain itself. People are using the term willy-nilly, but they don't really know what it means.
No, I agree with you. And I had some conversations about that yesterday. We are at the blockchain forum, the global blockchain forum.
Blockchain forum.
And, there's probably a couple thousand people here, and I'll bet if you asked 15 people what blockchain was, you'd get 15 different answers. But the one I started to get consensus on yesterday was that, and this isn't going to be exact, and people that are truly in blockchain are going to cringe when I say this, but blockchain is the tool. It's a little bit like the software. You don't go around and tout what you're doing, what software you're using. You go around and tout what you're doing with the software. Yeah. And I think that's where the opportunity with blockchain is. Blockchain provides a permanent record, an unalterable record, and a great ability to track transactions and flow of information. It also enables very distant parts of the world that can't access banking very easily, but can get access to the web. It gives them an opportunity to participate in financial transactions in a way that they've never been afforded before. Yeah. But those are the end things, So blockchain, by virtue of what it does and how it's engineered, enables all kinds of different transactions to occur that never were able to be occurring before, at a security level that never been able to be occurring before. So it definitely has a future, but investing in blockchain is like investing in JavaScript, And again, I'm going to make the blockchain guys cringe with that. I know it, but it's investing in what you can do with blockchain that's really what's important here.
And which is head and shoulders above. That's like banks, which are centralized. You don't know who's messing with those records. You don't know, like Wells Fargo. Perfect example.
Exactly.
Right.
But you got to remember the sheer size of those organizations, and sort of the data security required. My daughter happens to work at one of Canada's big banks, out of university for a few years, and is on a team where they're bringing new applications to business and what have you. And one minor little change, an example, being able to, as a corporation, photograph a check and deposit it. A lot of people can do individually now. And individual was one thing. But the complexity for the bank to be able to allow a company to do it corporately was like when she started describing to me the ramifications of all the different systems in the bank that had to be altered just to allow that one thing to occur was mind-boggling. Okay, and it was probably a 2-year process for them to do that. So now you get into blockchain, and absolutely, blockchain can cure so many problems that the banks have. But that's a 10-year process. That's not, hey, let's just start using blockchain next year and make our bank better. It's not going to happen. It can never happen that way,
Because most people are fighting it anyway.
Well, they are and they aren't. I think that people recognize at a big picture level some of the benefits it can bring, but actually implementing is a far different story for these highly complex organizations, and I think it will happen, but it never happens as quickly as people think it can happen.
Yeah.
So, but
and then you'll also have the people from Arizona or Utah or Ohio that they're not on the left or right coast, and so they're not probably exposed as much as we are. I mean, you're in a metropolitan area. I'm in the L.A. Orange County area, so I'm seeing a lot more emerging on things like meetups, where these groups, these little clusters are starting to gather followers, and they're getting a little bit of the word out there. I don't think that's probably happening in a small town.
I don't know. With the web, I think the web has been the great equalizer because certainly in most of the industrialized parts of the world, and frankly, even in a great majority of the non-industrialized parts of the world, one way or another, people have access to the web, and with that, it is the great equalizer, and people can communicate with each other, they can transact with each other, and I think more by virtue of the population that's in these urban centers compared to maybe more rural areas, there might not seem to be as much of that going on.
Yeah.
But people can organize themselves for whatever purposes they want, and I think that's going pretty well.
Okay.
But
Very good.
No, we're very excited. I think that the world is going to adopt security tokens in a big way. I think that's going to happen over the next few years. I think it's very global in nature. And I think the companies that will do well in this industry are people that think globally, but also think about due diligence. Think about creating real businesses with real management teams and real customers with profit orientation. And that's really, in a phrase, what we are as DigiMax, the public company. We're interested in getting involved in those aspects of the business where we can immediately generate revenue for our shareholders, and within the first year of operation of a new business type of business unit, that we can generate profitability. Because profitability is what's required to sustain a business, and if you can't have profitability, you can't rely on investor money forever, and so you've got to start generating it yourself. And that's what DigiCrypts is doing. And how are we doing that? We're bringing together an amazing group of people as a management team, amazing depth of experience, amazing partners that we work with around the globe who are registered, successful, entities, broker-dealers who've successfully done these transactions before, and an amazing and growing, global group of registered sellers who are keenly interested in having their clients own really good quality tokens, just like they would be interested in owning good quality common shares, good quality mutual funds, And that kind of distribution network, I think, is quite unique. I'm not going to say it's the only, but the way we're approaching it is quite unique, and it's a huge opportunity for the companies who issue the tokens, the investors who invest in them, and frankly, the investors who want to own shares in DigiMax. It's a great opportunity for everyone.
Yeah, you get you make a little profit for somebody who didn't have a whole lot of profit to begin with. They make a little more profit. They're going to invest in something else that you guys bring. They trust you, and they're going to come back and keep doing it, just building their little personal empire.
Absolutely. So this has been great.
Wow, thanks, man. I'm glad I came out here. It's
I appreciate you coming up to San Francisco to meet me here. This is really good.
I've been here a bazillion times, but I always enjoy coming out.
Exactly.
Hang out with guys like you, and make this an ongoing relationship.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to have a lot of upcoming news, and having the opportunity to kind of introduce also some of our own clients to this process, I think would be great.
Love it. Absolutely, man. So let's keep it going.
What you're doing is great. You're helping the world understand this whole blockchain world and the crypto world better than they did before. And if I've helped add a couple of pieces or kernels of information to that process, then we've achieved something.
More than a couple. You've added a couple of clusters. That's great, man.
Very good.
Good. Thank you for coming on, and look forward to doing this again really soon.
Absolutely.
All right?
Look forward to seeing you on this process again soon as well.
Good talk, man.
Cheers. Bye-bye.